Good morning, good morning, good morning. I have been promising a video that I will show you how to stain over paint, and this is part one of that video. For the first part, what I did was I scuff sanded this entire piece with a sanding block with 100 grit sandpaper. This has a lot of sheen to it, so I wanted to make sure that I cut that sheen down. So I scuff sanded the entire top of the piece, and then after that, I cleaned it with rubbing alcohol, the entire surface, and then I rinsed it with water so that my surface is completely prepped. And this is, you can use either denatured alcohol or rubbing alcohol to clean your surface, but you always need to make sure whatever product you use that you rinse it off after you've used it. The top of this piece, I'm going to paint the entire piece with this beautiful white, which is like a really pure white by Country Chic, and it's called Simplicity. But for the top, I wanted to show you how I'm going to paint the top, and then after I let it dry, not fully cure because this does have a top coat built in, but once I let it dry, I'm able to stain right over top of this top. But I wanted white to be my base because I really do want some of the white to kind of pop through just a little bit and make this give depth to the top. So let's start off. The key to getting a good finished look with any of the tops of the stains, actually your entire piece, is to make sure that you have long, even brush strokes. This piece is large, so I'll actually go off camera for a few seconds, but know that I am doing completely long, even brush strokes. And you want to make sure that even your base coat of the paint is done in long, even brush strokes, as well as your stain is done in your long strokes. Because if you go like halfway, it will show up at the end and it won't look like it's a fluid piece. So just to do the top, all I'm going to do is do paint on long, even brush strokes in the Simplicity. And if you have gouges or anything else, you will want to make sure that you fill those gouges because those will show up. If you just have light scratches and they don't show up after you've painted, then those will not show up. But anything that shows up even after you painted the first coat will show up after when you stain it. So if you don't mind a little bit of texture in your piece, you can leave those. But for me, if I have deep gouges, I'm going to fill those with either a wood filler or a mud filler. And I'm going to pull this all the way through. So I usually start in my center and then work my way all the way out. And I'm going to go off camera here because this piece is absolutely large. The key is to make sure your strokes go all the way across. This white is gorgeous. I mean, this is a beautiful white, and the coverage is absolutely amazing. And I know you can't probably see that from that angle, but I will show you when I get it all done. I did a piece yesterday that I'm really excited to show you. I painted the entire piece in Rocky Mountain, which is a gray, in the deep gray family, and I stained the top right up top of the paint, and the base I did in the Rocky Mountain as well, but I did a black wax over top of it, and it is gorgeous. And these are all the Country Chic products. So long, even brush strokes. Long, even brush strokes. And you can mist this, it's not necessary, but if you feel like your brush is starting to drag, you can mist this. It does accept water very well. A lot of times the paints that have the top coat built in do not accept water very well. This one accepts water very well and will allow you to thin it out a little bit if you need to. Step over here for a minute, finish up my section here. So if you end up changing direction That's the biggest thing I would recommend you don't do. Don't change direction with your brush, meaning if you're going this way, stay going this way. Because if you change direction with your brush strokes, it will actually show up when you stain it. It'll show that you change directions with your brush strokes. That's why the brush strokes are so important, to be going as straight as you can get them. We got a room over here. This paint actually has a primer built into it. For pieces that are known to be bleeders, you will still want to prime them, but for most pieces you do not need to prime because it does have priming built into it as well as the top coat. Sorry, there's a plane going overhead. It's actually a beautiful day out here today, so this will probably dry pretty fast. Long, even strokes. Kind of get a swinging action going. A rocking action going. So my idea for this piece is I'm going to paint the entire piece in this beautiful simplicity, stain the top in the Kona that I absolutely love, and then I'm going to push this in a little bit further, closer to you. And then I'm gonna, I think, accent it with gold hardware. That's kind of the direction that I'm leaning. So then you just want, so when you go and do the sides, be careful that you don't overlap the top too much. If you do, pull your strokes back through. This will make sense when you do it. But if you overlap the top when you're going on the sides, if you change brush stroke, change your stroke, it will show up when you stain it. So try to be very careful when you're going around the edges to not overlap that top very much. And if you do, and it's started to dry a little bit, just wet your brush a little bit or wet your surface a little bit, and it will wet that area enough to get your brush strokes to even back out. So if I'm going this way and then when I get to do the edges like this, see the front's not that bad because it's already going in the same direction, but when you get to the sides, they're not going in the same direction. Just be careful that you don't overlap the top with a different direction of your brush stroke. That will show up after when you get ready to stain it. And if you do, it's not a big deal. You can always just lightly sand that spot back, repaint it, and restain it. Everything is fixable. I should know, I've had to fix just about every mistake I've ever made. So we're almost done doing the first coat. And this has superior coverage. I probably will just do one coat on the top since I'm staining over it anyways. And I just need a surface that will absorb my stain. That's the main goal of doing the top of this piece. For the bottom, I will need a minimum of 2 coats, but this does have superior coverage. 2 coats will probably be all that I need for this. And I will probably still have half of my 16-ounce jar left over. Because when I did that big, huge buffet in the dark roast, I still had half of a jar left over, and that piece was gigantic. So very little goes a very long way with this paint line. And I'm gonna do the edge over here real quick. Sorry if I'm off camera. This is where I did overlap a little bit, so I want to make sure that I pull my line back through. So you want to make sure you pull your line back through. And if it is too dry, which mine is not because I just did it, then you can wet that surface a little bit. So it is already starting to dry. I'm going to be back in just a little bit and show you how to stain this. I can't see the front from this angle. So I'm going to stop for now. I'm going to let this completely dry. I'm gonna look at it and see if I need a second coat on this or not. Right now, I'm thinking it's got enough of a surface, but I will determine that when it's dry. That's when you can fully tell if you need to add a second coat or not. And then I will go ahead and I will stain it, and I will come back and show you how to stain it. Hello, hello, hello. I have you lowered a little bit so that you can actually see what I'm doing here. I did go ahead and do a second coat of the Simplicity on the top of this. The coverage with the first coat was good, but I wanted to make sure that I have a full solid surface for my stain to absorb into and adhere to. I tried to bring it a little bit closer so that you could actually see. This is the stain that I'm using over this. This is my absolute all-time favorite stain of all times. It's Kona by Verathane, and it's a deep, dark, delicious stain. This is an oil base, so I recommend you do this outside. And the other thing that I'm going to use is just a foam brush. And you will need a clean rag to wipe off your excess with. Again, you want to go in completely straight lines with your stain and do small sections at a time and then wipe that off. So I'm going to start now, and you'll only be able to see this section because I brought you close enough you could actually see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to do one long even coat across the whole piece. So I try to do, you know, maybe 3-inch sections at a time, but you want to make sure you get the whole entire thing across. Let me move my thing over a little bit. So you want to make sure you get all the way across. And I will do 2 passes, going all the way across, making sure that I get, and sometimes I push down just a itty bit on my foam brush if it's not releasing good. So after I do my first pass, then I take my clean rag and I wipe that pass all the way straight through. You want to go all the way straight through. And you can roll your rag and then take another pass through, but make sure your lines are straight. That's the most important thing. I don't know if you can, probably can't see it once I get a few more on there. Since my base coat is a very light, it's a white, very, very, very white, you're gonna see a lot of color coming through this piece on the top. If you want a darker look like I did on the little table that I'm posting for tomorrow, you can paint the base color darker. So if you don't want something light, I really wanted a true variation of color on the top of this piece, so I went with the light base color for my paint. I don't know if you can see that now. All the way through, go straight as you possibly can. So just keep going and working your, so I let my paint dry, but not set up completely. So I let it dry for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. I let the first coat dry for an hour, and then I came back and put on a second coat. And then I let that one dry for at least an hour. You just want it to be dry to the touch. Remember, in order to stain, you just need an absorbable surface. Well, chalk paint or chalky style paint, this clay-based paint, is a porous surface, and that's all you need to be able to stain. So grab from one end. This is what I'm doing. I'm grabbing from this end and I'm pulling towards me to pull that straight line. If you have a smaller piece, you don't have to worry about doing this much. But since this piece is so large, I'm having to stretch myself out there. Just do long, even strokes through. Just keep her going with your sections. Now when I get to this last section, I might do the whole top, finish off the whole top since it's not that thick. But the main thing is you want to have stain over the whole top. Just try to get them as even looking as possible. You do not want to get the stain that has a built-in poly. That one will not absorb properly into this. That one is made only for going over bare wood. It is not made to go over any other type of wood product or surface like this. Oops. Need to buy different gloves. Okay. This last little section, and then I'll do the front part. Finish getting this section here. Whoop, drag it through. Now you're gonna want this to dry at least minimum of 12 hours before you put anything on top of it to seal it. Okay, so now I'm gonna drag all the way through. Try to find as clean of a spot on top of my rag as I can and pull and drag all the way through. Flip my cloth, pull and drag all the way through. All the way through. If for some reason you stop in the middle, just take your rag and flip it again and go back over that spot. Now remember, each pass you're taking off more, so just be careful you don't take off too much. And I'm liking the way that that is looking. It's hard to tell from that angle. Let me see if I can bring you in. I still got to go around the edges. But if you can see here, you can see the lighter base, I wanted it to be that light. I really wanted the color variation to pop through on this piece because I really wanted that light undertone to paint the base in a really light color. But as you can see, you can stain right over directly over paint, and you can get a really beautiful wood look. I might add another coat. I'm gonna wait until this one fully dries and then see if I like the contrast in the colors. I'm liking it so far, but sometimes when it dries a little bit differently. I'm gonna go around the edges, do exactly what I just did on the top, and I will show you the finished product at some point tomorrow. Thank you for watching.